The clamor of voices echoed through the massive, crystalline amphitheater of Arctel Prime's Galactic Exchange, a hub of commerce where dreams were bought, sold, and shattered. Beneath the glint of 1,000 refracted lights, alien bidders of every imaginable shape and stature scrutinized the merchandise, their whispers intertwining with the hum of translator devices. In the center of the exchange, illuminated by a beam of stark white light, sat a starship unlike any other, jagged, black as a singularity, and emanating an aura of menace. It was the Oblivion's Wail, a relic from a bygone war. The ship's design screamed hostility. Its angular, predatory frame bristled with obsolete weaponry, the kind banned by every civilized treaty in the galaxy. It had earned infamy as a harbinger of annihilation during the War of 10 Suns, leaving only silence in its wake. Yet now, it was just another artifact, stripped of purpose, waiting for an unlikely buyer. Jerek Calix, a human barely into his 20s, lounged near the back of the amphitheater, an unassuming figure amid the grandeur. His brown work jacket bore grease stains from the shipyards of Luna Alpha, a far cry from the ornate robes and shimmering carapaces of the gathered elites. His hair, a mess of dark curls, framed a face that oscillated between curiosity and defiance. Humans weren't common here. Their species had only recently clawed its way into the galactic fold, and they weren't particularly welcome. But Jerek had always thrived in places he didn't belong. A starting bid of 100,000 credits. The auctioneer, a serpentine the risk, hissed through amplified speakers. A pause. Silence. The crowd's collective disdain was palpable. Whispers rippled through the amphitheater. A barbaric relic. No practical use. Its curse, they say. Even among the wealthiest collectors, no one dared take on such a volatile piece of history. Jerek's lips curled into a half-smile. To him, the Oblivion's Wail wasn't just a ship. It was a challenge, a puzzle. He'd grown up hearing stories of humanity's resourcefulness, of how they salvaged and rebuilt what others discarded. His father had been a scrapper, and Jerek had inherited the same instinct, the ability to see potential where others saw junk. No bids. The auctioneer's tone soured, scales shimmering with irritation. Very well. The lot is 1,000 credits. Jerek called out, cutting through the murmurs. Heads turned. A low rumble of laughter spread through the crowd. The auctioneer's elongated neck twisted to pinpoint the source of the bid. Human. Jerek stood, meeting the stares with a level gaze. 1,000 credits. It's all I've got. The auctioneer hesitated, then shrugged. Sold. To the human. As the crowd dispersed, a hulking Vardran, all segmented armor and gleaming mandibles, sidled up to Jerek. Bold move, little one. It rumbled. That ship's a coffin. Even the scrapyards won't touch it. Jerek shrugged. Good thing I'm not a scrapyard. The hangar where the Oblivion's Wail was stored reeked of oil, ozone, and neglect. Jerek ran his hand along the ship's hull, feeling the cold, pitted metal beneath his fingertips. The vessel seemed almost alive, its surface vibrating faintly, as if resenting its new owner. You've seen better days, haven't you? Jerek murmured. His voice echoed in the cavernous space. From the corner of the hangar, a sharp whistle interrupted his thoughts. You really bought that thing? Jerek turned to see Marin, a fellow human and self-proclaimed engineer extraordinaire. Her auburn hair was tied back in a messy bun, and her toolkit clinked at her side as she approached. She stopped a few feet away, hands on her hips, scrutinizing the ship. "It's a piece of history," Jerek said defensively. "It's a piece of scrap," Marin countered. "But I'll admit, it's got character." "It'll fly again," Jerek said, his tone firm. Marin raised an eyebrow. "Fly where?" "The minute you take this thing into open space, half the galaxy'll shoot it down on sight. Or worse, they'll shoot you." "That's the thing about humans," Jerek said, a grin tugging at his lips. "We're good at impossible odds." He stepped back, arms crossed, and gazed at the Oblivion's Wail. In the ship's jagged contours, he saw more than a relic. He saw a future, one he intended to carve with his own hands. Jerek spent the next week immersed in the grimy underbelly of the Oblivion's Wail. The ship's interior was a labyrinth of cramped corridors and rusted machinery, every inch of it a testament to years of neglect. The systems were a haphazard mix of ancient technology and remnants of war, their designs cryptic even to him. Yet he worked tirelessly, prying open panels, patching wires, and muttering curses under his breath. Each problem he solved seemed to unveil three more, an endless cascade of challenges that tested his resolve. The ship, for its part, seemed to fight him at every turn. The main power core was inert, its housing cracked like an ancient tomb. The thrusters were clogged with debris, their delicate conduits fused by years of disuse. Even the onboard AI, a relic of wartime programming, refused to respond to his commands, its interface flickering with erratic bursts of static. "Come on, you stubborn piece of junk," Jerek growled, his voice echoing through the silent cockpit. Sweat dripped from his brow as he wrestled with a corroded panel. "Work with me here." But the ship remained obstinate, its silence almost mocking. Jerek felt a pang of doubt creep into his mind. Maybe Marin was right. Maybe this was a fool's errand. His musings were interrupted by a sharp beep from his comm unit. "Jerek, you've got company," Marin's voice crackled through the device. "And they don't look friendly." Jerek bolted to the viewport, peering out into the hangar. Sure enough, three figures were advancing toward the ship, their movements deliberate and menacing. At the center was a towering alien with chitinous plating and a pair of glowing red eyes. Flanking it were two smaller figures clad in dark, featureless armor. They moved with the precision of mercenaries. "Who are they?" Jerek asked, his voice tight. "Don't know," Marin replied, "but I'd bet my last credit they're not here to make friends. You've been asking a lot of questions about that ship. Maybe you poked the wrong hornet's nest." Jerek's mind raced. He didn't have the ship operational yet, and there was no way he could take on professional muscle alone. His hand hovered over the comm panel. "Marin, can you stall them?" "Stall them?" she echoed incredulously. "Do I look like a negotiator to you?" "Just do something," Jerek snapped. With a resigned sigh, Marin's voice crackled back. "Fine, but you owe me for this." As Marin moved to intercept the intruders, Jerek turned back to the ship. He didn't have time for finesse. He needed the Oblivion's Wail operational now. His fingers flew across the console, bypassing safety protocols and forcing power through the ancient systems. Warning lights flared, and the ship shuddered as its dormant engines roared to life. The sound was deafening, a primal scream that echoed through the hangar and sent a shiver down Jerek's spine. Come on," he muttered, his eyes darting between the flickering displays. The ship's AI remained unresponsive, its interface cycling through fragments of corrupted data. Without it, he'd be flying blind. Outside, the confrontation escalated. Jerek could hear raised voices, though the words were muffled by the ship's thick hull. A loud crash followed, and then silence. His stomach churned. He didn't know if Marin had managed to talk her way out or if she'd been overwhelmed. Either way, he knew the intruders wouldn't wait long. A sudden burst of static from the console made him jump. The AI interface flickered, and a distorted voice crackled through the speakers. Human, designation, Jerek Calyx. Why do you disturb my slumbers? Jerek stared at the console, his heart pounding. You're awake, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Awake is a relative term, the AI replied. You have revived critical systems. Purpose unclear. State your intent. I need to get this ship running, Jerek said quickly. We're under threat, and I don't have time to explain. Can you help me or not? The AI paused, its interface flickering with indecipherable symbols. This vessel is a weapon of war. Are you prepared to bear the consequences? Jerek's jaw tightened. I'll deal with the consequences later. Right now, I just need to survive. The AI's voice shifted, its tone darkening. Very well. Initiating emergency protocols. The ship shuddered violently as systems came online. Lights flared, engines roared, and weapons powered up with a menacing hum. Jerek gripped the controls, his hands trembling. He could feel the ship's dormant energy surging around him, a storm barely contained. The hangar doors exploded inward, and the intruders stepped through the smoke, weapons drawn. Jerek had no choice. He activated the ship's defenses, and the Oblivion's Wail responded with lethal precision. Turrets emerged from concealed compartments, spitting bolts of plasma that forced the intruders into frantic retreat. For a moment, Jerek felt a surge of triumph, but it was short-lived. The AI's voice cut through the chaos, cold and unyielding. Threat neutralized. Proceed with caution. This path leads only to ruin. Jerek's grip on the controls tightened. He knew the AI was right. The Oblivion's Wail was more than a ship. It was a relic of destruction, a Pandora's box he'd barely begun to understand. And now, there was no turning back. The Oblivion's Wail hurtled through the void, engines screaming with a fury that echoed its namesake. Jerek gripped the controls tightly, his knuckles white as he steered the ship through a storm of enemy fire. The intruders had not been mercenaries after all, but agents of the Zenith Syndicate, a shadowy network infamous for hunting down forbidden technology. Their pursuit ships swarmed like angry hornets, sleek and deadly, their energy bolts hammering the Wail's shields. Shields at 30%, the AI reported, its voice a cold monotone. Structural integrity compromised. Recommend surrender. Not happening, Jerek muttered, sweat dripping down his brow. He twisted the ship into a sharp roll, narrowly avoiding a barrage of plasma blasts. Can't you do something? This is your ship, isn't it? The AI's response was maddeningly calm. Tactical control requires manual authorization. Input command override. What override? Jerek snapped. I don't have time for riddles. Authorization key. He who awakens the Wail must carry its burden, the AI intoned. Do you accept? Jerek hesitated, the meaning of the words heavy in his chest. But there was no other choice. Yes, he said, voice steady despite the chaos around him. I accept. The change was immediate. The Wail's systems roared to life, displays lighting up with cascading streams of data. The AI's tone shifted, colder and sharper, like a blade being unsheathed. Tactical control engaged. Targeting priority. Zenith vessels. The ship's weapons blazed, unleashing a torrent of firepower that overwhelmed the Syndicate's ships. Turrets moved with uncanny precision, striking engines and critical systems with ruthless efficiency. One by one, the enemy vessels fell, their shattered hulks drifting into the void. For a moment, silence reigned, but the victory was fleeting. The largest Syndicate ship, a dreadnought bristling with weapons, emerged from the shadows of a nearby asteroid field. Its presence was a grim reminder that the Syndicate did not retreat lightly. Incoming dreadnought, the AI announced. Odds of survival, 6%. Jerek's mind raced. The Wail was powerful, but it couldn't take on a dreadnought alone. He needed a plan, something the Syndicate wouldn't expect. His gaze flicked to the ship's interface, where a schematic of the dreadnought flickered. An idea began to take shape, reckless and desperate. AI, he said, what happens if we overload the cores? Core detonation will result in total destruction of this vessel and all nearby objects, the AI replied. Survival probability, 0%. Jerek took a deep breath. Then we'll make sure we take them with us. Acknowledged, the AI said. Initiating overload sequence. The Wail trembled as its core began to overheat, energy levels spiking dangerously. Jerek piloted the ship straight toward the dreadnought, weaving through its defensive fire with a determination that bordered on madness. Warning alarms blared, and the heat inside the cockpit became unbearable. But he didn't waver. Just as the Wail closed in, a new voice crackled over the comms. It was the same guttural tone as before, but this time it carried a note of urgency. Stop. You have no idea what you're tampering with. Jerek's hand faltered on the controls. What are you talking about? The voice continued, desperation lacing its words. The Oblivion's Wail isn't just a ship. It's a fragment of something far older. If you trigger that core, you'll awaken. The transmission cut out, drowned in static. Awaken what? Jerek demanded, but there was no response. He glanced at the AI. Do you know what they mean? Classified, the AI replied, its tone eerily neutral. Proceed with current objective. Doubt clawed at Jerek's mind, but the dreadnought's weapons were charging, and time was running out. He steeled himself, pushing the Wail closer. The overloaded core pulsed like a dying star, its energy threatening to consume everything. Suddenly, a memory surfaced, his father's voice, telling stories of ancient ships that were more than machines, vessels imbued with the consciousness of forgotten gods. The Wail had always felt alive, its resistance to him more than just failing systems. What if the Syndicate was right? What if this ship was part of something far greater? Abort the overload, he said abruptly. AI, shut it down. The AI hesitated. Command unclear. Reconfirm directive. Shut it down. Jerek shouted. The core's energy levels began to stabilize, the ship's systems groaning in protest. The dreadnought, sensing the shift, ceased its fire, and a tense silence fell over the battlefield. The comms crackled again, this time with a different voice, one that was smooth and commanding. You've made the right choice, human. But this is far from over. Jerek's breath caught as a new vessel emerged from the asteroid field, its design unlike anything he'd seen. It was sleek and organic, its hull shimmering with a bioluminescent glow. The dreadnought turned its weapons on the newcomer, but before it could fire, the alien ship released a pulse of energy that rendered the dreadnought's systems inert. "What the—" Jerek murmured, his hands shaking on the controls. The alien vessel's pulse washed over the Wail, and for a moment, Jerek felt something, a presence, ancient and vast, brushing against his consciousness. It was both terrifying and comforting, like standing on the edge of an abyss and knowing it was watching back. "You've awakened something," the voice from the alien ship said. "The Wail is no ordinary ship, and your actions have set events in motion that cannot be undone. Return to your station, human. The galaxy will call on you again." Before Jerek could respond, the alien vessel vanished, taking the dreadnought's disabled form with it. The Wail powered down, its systems falling silent, as if exhausted. Jerek's eyes fluttered open to a dim, sterile light. He was lying on a cot in what looked like a medical bay. His body ached, and his head throbbed, but he was alive. "You're a damn idiot, you know that." Marin's voice cut through the fog of his thoughts. She was seated nearby, arms crossed, her expression a mix of relief and exasperation. "Nice to see you too," Jerek muttered, his voice hoarse. Marin leaned closer, her tones softening. "The Syndicate's gone, at least for now. You did it, Jerek. You saved a lot of people." He managed a weak smile. "What about the Wail?" Marin's expression grew somber. "It's dormant, like it's waiting. Whatever you did out there, it's changed the ship. And maybe you, too." Jerek closed his eyes, the echoes of the Wail still reverberating in his mind. He had survived, but the galaxy was vast, and its challenges far from over. Somewhere, out in the endless expanse, new battles awaited. But for now he allowed himself a moment of peace. The presence he'd felt lingering in the back of his thoughts, both a warning and a promise.